Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We have Adolph Reed Jr. on to talk about Joe Biden and the black vote. We also have a representative of the Trump campaign talking about their latest strategy and in particular outreach to minority voters. But we wanted to start today with two pretty horrific racist incidents that have really captured the nation's attention and shocked a lot of people.
Yeah, they certainly have. I mean, the first one involves a Central Park incident in which a African-American man, he's a bird watcher, got into a confrontation with a woman who had her dog off of the leash. And so as I understand it, the man was upset that the woman had her dog off of the leash, so he had some dog treats, basically saying, I will entice your dog to come to me if you do not put her on the leash. She decided to, I don't know any other way to describe it other than she called the police and only identified the fact that he was black, which seems quite racist to me. And there is a video of the entire incident. Let's take a listen.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop.
Please don't come close to me.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
And
me.
I'm taking pictures and calling the cops.
Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, I'm in the Ramble, and there is a man, African-American, he has a bicycle helmet. He is recording me and threatening me and my dog. There is an African-American man, I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. And I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the Ramble. Please send the cops immediately. I'm in Central Park in the Ramble. I don't know.
Thank you.
So the incident was then watched 40 million times on Twitter as of now, and now Mrs. Cooper, Amy Cooper, who is the woman in the video, has lost her job and apparently had her dog, who was placed in the video, confiscated away from her. I guess it sparked interest. I get a broader conversation around cancel culture and what exactly the appropriate circumstances for somebody like this are. I mean, it's something you and I have kind of been reckoning with, because I'm like, there's no defending exactly what they did. I mean, should she lose her job? She worked in an investment firm. I mean, taking the dog away. I mean, so many of these things, it just seems like we take these like incidents, and there's no question. I mean, quite racial. There's obvious racial animus.
Her whole feigned hysteria. Right. Oh, a black man is threatening. I mean, it's terrible. Horrible.
Right.
Horrible. This kind of was bubbling online yesterday while we were doing the show. We were watching it together. And I think both of us were ready. Before we watched the video, both of us were ready to be like, come on, how bad could it be? Like, we all get so outraged. And then we watched the video and we're like, oh, this is something else. Because she immediately... Here's some of the context, right? Here's the context. Having lived in New York, people enforce the rules and the laws and the norms on each other all the time. Because if you don't, you have chaos, right? People are in each other's business. I can't tell you how many people stopped me on the street and told me something I should be doing differently with my kid. Like, this is New York. I'm serious. This is New York, right? If you're walking on the wrong side of the path, if your dog is off the leash, if you're on the wrong side of the escalator and you're standing and you're not walking, I mean, all of these things, right? Very common to confront people, to enforce the rules, to enforce the norms. Like, that is New York. So that is what Christian is doing here to start with. He's a bird watcher, and she has her dog off the leash, which is against the rules, and which everyone knows, and which she acknowledges she knew was against the rules. Okay, so he's enforcing. And so she completely loses her mind.
She really does.
And decides in the most blatant way possible to assert her clear white privilege, which comes with both there's both the race piece and the class piece, because this is someone who's, part of the ascendant meritocracy and has obviously had her life go very well. Is very used to getting what she wants in the situation. So here's why, and I'm skeptical of cancel culture. I think both of us have been, on the side of people who say that this went too far, should your life really be ruined? When she called the cops on this African-American man, she was literally putting him in danger. And the other video that we're going to play, I think, proves out that fact of a man who committed the potential crime of writing a bad check, who appears to have been murdered by police officers who have now been fired in Minneapolis. So when you call and look to sick, armed law enforcement on an individual for nothing, yeah, I think that you should lose your job.
Yeah, so I
think maybe you should lose your dog, sure. I mean, the dog part of it, people freaked out about. To me, the dog is not the point. But yeah, I think that there are justified consequences for this kind of behavior, because here's the other thing, is we have seen a lot of incidents of white people basically using their white privilege and freaking out about black people doing normal waiting for a friend in Starbucks, yes, right? Babysitting white children, like all of these things. I mean, we played on this show, Ahmaud Arbery, who gets hunted down and murdered, right, as the extreme circumstance. And Amy is nowhere in that category. But I do think that consequences are justified in this instance, even as I am myself very sort of skeptical and hesitant of that cancel culture instinct.
It's these incidents that always, I would reject the idea that calling police is putting somebody in harm's way. But because that's just, I mean, ultimately that is how you enforce laws in a society. And yet, you're right, which is that in this particular way, when you do involve higher authorities, once you are employed at that level and this goes viral, I don't see how a company can keep you on board, because, they don't need the hassle, right?
Right.
And so, taking the dog away, it just goes to a broader conversation of, look, this woman clearly embodies like YIMBY racism, upper middle class, like YIMBY racism kind of at its best. The question is like, how do you navigate something like, does Mrs. Cooper deserve for the rest of her life to be branded as a racist because of this one bad incident? I'm not sure I'm willing to go that far, because, as somebody who's actually experienced quite a bit of like overt racism, and, a lot of these people, some of them didn't know what they were doing. Some of them did know what they were doing, and they're bad people. And yet, if you want to change the way that you live in a society, I just don't know if this is taking somebody's dog away, making them lose their job, forever being Googled and kind of being labeled as this, being called a racist is the worst thing that can possibly happen to you in our society. And, in this particular instance, I do think that she committed a very racist act. It's much more about a broader question of how do we, because, you have all these army of people who are trying to get her banned from Central Park for the rest of her life, taking away the dog. Now she's lost her job. She won't be employed in a white-collar firm probably ever again because of this type of incident. She'll be dogged for the rest of her life. And some of that is justified. I think the firing maybe is justified.
I don't know.
But again,
you're not going to be able to work in corporate America at a investment firm.
Well, it's like the Twitter lady.
Cry me a river.
Of course, but it's like the Twitter lady about tweeting like an obviously offensive, racist, stupid joke. And then, does that mean that you deserve to have something killed forever for your whole life? I just don't think so.
Look, in general, I agree with you. Yeah. In this case, because I do see it different. I do see her as having put Christian in harm's way, because, as I said, look at the numbers. Look who is thrown into prison. Look who is disproportionately impacted by police violence. The other video we're going to show you of Minneapolis, it's horrific. So, yes, when you go into white lady hysterics about the black man that's threatening you and your dog, you're calling in people who have guns, that is creating a dangerous situation. There's just no doubt in my mind about that. What you're getting to is a couple of points. One is a lot of the outrage signalers online aren't really interested in outcomes. They're interested in signaling their own virtue. They're interested in shaming this one bad person. And that lets a lot of people off the hook. One of the things that struck me right away with this particular dynamic of this affluent white lady who went to University of Chicago, et cetera, we don't know her political leanings. It's very statistically unlikely she's a Trump supporter.
Right.
Statistically highly unlikely, right? Living in Manhattan, working at Franklin Templeton, et cetera, et cetera. Democrats like to often imagine that it's only Republicans who are racist, and specifically the white working class, right? Yeah. Totally looked down on and condescending, they're the deplorable, they're the bad ones. And there's very little soul searching of the type of racism that exists among a lot of white feminists, a lot of like the pussy hat crowd, that goes completely unacknowledged but comes out very much in incidents like these. So I think that dynamic is also like a really important one to delve into, because part of the cancel culture instinct is like, let's deal with this one bad person. And I've seen people calling for her to be arrested and things like that. And what that does is it sends a signal that like, okay, we dealt with the bad person and now us good people are going to get on with our lives, without doing any kind of reflection about ourselves, about, you know, the people that we associate with, about a broader mentality and sickness that exists in the culture outside of this one person, Amy Cooper.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the right way to think about it, which is that, you know, going and signing a petition to get Amy Cooper fired or to get banned from Central Park or take her dog away does not make you a better person.
Yeah.
And it is also what it is that...
I do think she should be fired, though, personally.
I think, you know, look, once it goes viral, like, I don't know how as an investment firm you can keep her on, just in the way that the world works right now. But in terms of going after the broader implications, exactly what you're right, because a lot of the people who are Twitter army and all of this are all exactly the type of like YIMBY people that she was. I mean, they would probably experience the situation very much in the same way. And so this entire way that we look at this needs to change. And I think the best exemplar of this is that this thing got so much play online. I mean, everywhere, 40 million times, etc. And as we're talking about here, there was the killing of George Floyd, who was an unarmed man who had hit, I mean, literally the police stepped on his neck and he died later. Yeah. And I mean, it's one of the most clear cases of police brutality. Those horrific. 4 officers have now been fired by their police department.
And the FBI is investigating, and I hope that they do face charges, because it is judging by the video and what we see, it is murder.
All we have is the video right now, and I want to make sure everybody plays that, because that story is, I mean, far more important in my view than something like this. So let's play it.
Man, I can't breathe in my face. Just get up.
What do you want?
I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my neck. I can't breathe shit.
Bro, get up, get in the car, man.
I will.
Get up, get in the car.
I can't move.
I've been waiting the whole thing, man. Get up, get in the car.
Mama.
Get up and get in the car right.
I can't.
I gave y'all the opportunity to get in, bro. I told you can't win.
My knee.
You can't win, man.
I'm through.
I know you a nigga, you didn't listen.
I'm claustrophobic. My stomach hurts. My neck hurts. Everything hurts. Get some water or something. Please. Please.
I mean, there's no words for something like that.
And you have bystanders who are
like, hey, the guy can't breathe.
Like, what are you doing? Yeah. Check his pulse. What are you doing? The context here, for what it's worth, not that anything would really excuse this action, is they were called onto the scene because of a forgery in progress. What it meant is there was a suspicion that he had written a bad check. And of course, this recalls very much Eric Garner in New York, who ends up losing his life over selling loose cigarettes on the street. Like this, you know, the outrageous crime of selling loose cigarettes. And so in the case of Garner, in the case of George Floyd, you have the crime not only of being black, but of being poor.
Yeah.
And the way that those two things are criminalized in this country.
Yeah, I mean, you can see here that one of the male onlookers is basically saying, hey man, like you got him on the ground, like you're like, why are you doing this? Like, you got to let him off. And you can see, too, that you can see there was like that taunting that the officer was making. Now, I think I mentioned that 2 of these men have been relieved of their duty. The other 2 are still on receiving pay, but they're not involved in any law enforcement. FBI investigating it as a hate crime. And it seems like in this particular incident that this should garner, you know, a real level of outrage, because this comes on, you know, the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery, and you can also just see how this should be a very clear-cut thing. for both sides. And I'm actually beginning to see from the right as well. I mean, Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina tweeted about the incident saying firing the officers was the right move. And the second is arrest them. Hashtag I can't breathe. You haven't seen, any sort of like trutherism or something emerge around these cases.
Well, wait, we'll see what comes.
We will see. I do think that it is, I think it's an encouraging sign that whenever at least in these horrific incidents like this, that we can at least come together.
I actually see the video. You're absolutely right. Like, obviously, man lost his life here, and there's no comparison between that and Amy Cooper calling the cops and, oh my God, I'm white and he's black, help me. However, I see the two incidents as connected, because you were calling in again, armed law enforcement, knowing that, look, we may want to ignore it and we may want to pretend it doesn't exist, but we know the disproportionate numbers of the way that African-American men in particular are criminalized. So I see these things as, part of a system, and I see them very much as connected in that way.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I do as well, but I just think that the way that we have to look at it, I mean, just the entire framing of like putting somebody in harm's way, et cetera, the logical conclusion is then like what? We shouldn't have police? Like, we obviously need to have police in our society.
Of course, but
do they need to behave and have different tactics in the way that they handle people? Should there be robust oversight? Should there be all
right? But the thing 100%. Is, like, when you see a video like this, if we didn't have this video of this man being killed, right? What do you think would have happened?
Yeah, he probably would have gotten off scot-free.
If we didn't have a video of Ahmaud Arbery being hunted down and murdered, what do you think would have happened? So, there's a desire to paint these as like one-off incidents, like, oh, well, here's the bad ones and we got the bad ones. And again, like, that lets off the hook a more structural systemic issue that we have to deal with and think about harder in this country.
Yeah, on that, 100% agree.
All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radars. That's next.